My name's Emma Hossack. I am a passionate coach, a resilience practitioner, exec and personal coach. I psychometric test resilience and wellbeing and emotional intelligence now. And I am really, really privileged to be part of the Women Empowering Defence Network. And I will see some of you at the conference next week. So why am I here today? So I have been invited to come and talk to you about something that I'm really passionate about. One of the reasons why I got into coaching was that I lived with a childhood full of guilt. I was brought up Catholic. I had experienced burnout twice in my life, and a lot of my challenges were around fear of failure, perfectionism, and having very poor boundaries. And we're going to explore that today. But why is this so important for women? Now, I have been coaching for 10 years, the last 5 years, working with some of the UK and world's biggest brands. And this subject comes up time and time again. It comes up more with women than men. And when we psychometric test resilience, one of the pillars that always comes up as the gap in resilience is around boundaries. Now, boundaries are the absolute core to our energy. If we have poor boundaries, we know that it can impact our sleep, our work, our relationships, and the contentment within ourselves. So my wish today for you is to spend this next hour thinking about yourself guilt-free. It doesn't matter whether you are cutting out of your workday, your family time, this is for you. And by the time you leave this session, my wish is that you are much more aware of where you sit with your boundaries and you've got some tools to help you protect them. So please do use the chat box. If you want to message me privately, you can do that. And at the end of this session, my email address and QR code for my LinkedIn will be there. I would love to hear your feedback. But let's come back to you. This is your time to recognize what good boundaries look like to you. And it's really important to say that no one can tell you what boundaries are for you. They are personal to you. My wish is that you start to become self-aware and check in with yourself today. We're going to explore what is it that's holding you back from good boundaries. And we're going to look at ways in which you can set them and say no gracefully, but most importantly, lose your guilt. Now, when we think about boundaries, I want you to start to think about what they mean to you. But when we think about boundaries, these are the things that tend to come up. Boundaries help us take care of ourselves. They give us permission to say no and to not take everything on. Now, this takes time, and this is rewiring years and years of belief systems that you've been carrying. But some of it we're going to look at will be down to your clarity. Boundaries draw a clear line around what is okay for us and what is not. Now, if you are someone that is consistently saying yes to things that actually do not align to your values, then this session is for you. But the truth is, and we're going to explore this today, that when we are clear with our purpose and our values, we are much more able to say no. And the biggest game changer for me, and I want it to be for you today, is to really explore what your values are, because they are your guide in your decision making. But I want you to keep thinking about this question today. Does saying yes align with your goals or compromise them? If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Now, we have 21 people on this call, which is fantastic. And before we carry on, I'd just love to hear from anyone that perhaps wants to share with me or use the chat box around what does good boundaries mean to you? How do you know when you have them? What shows up for you? Who's happy to start? Now, I'll prompt you. So when I know that I've got good boundaries is when I notice that I'm sleeping better and much more aligned to my strategy. And I'm much more contented. When my boundaries are blurred, I don't sleep very well. I probably overthink and I take on too much. Does anyone else know what shows up for them and how they're feeling when they set good boundaries? Let's see what's coming up. Through on chat. When I feel comfortable doing something, I love that. So what we're talking about there, Maeva, is actually aligning to your values, which is brilliant. Marie, you said you gain a better work-life balance. And Lisa, thank you, sense of satisfaction. Now, what happens when we don't set good boundaries? What do we know about ourselves? What is it you see? So let's hear some of the in the chat box, so if you're happy to share. Sarah, you said when I can focus on a task and I'm not thinking of other things, that absolute laser beam focus is great when we're clear. So some of you are saying when you have poor boundaries, you feel overwhelmed. Now I start to overthink, make up things that haven't happened. You feel panicked when the boundaries aren't clear. This is something now we're delving into, Eleanor, which is about psychological safety, isn't it? Especially when we're working in a leadership role or we are being led. It can give us a sense and put us into fight or flight when our boundaries aren't clear. Stress shows up as physical problems, Helen, they do. Start to think about what might be showing up for you physically. Oh my gosh, there's something amazing that Mavis said. When boundaries are not respected, I can feel threatened. Absolutely. It puts you into fight or flight. So I want you to start to become aware today about maybe how your boundaries are at the moment. Are you absolutely smashing it on your boundaries? Are you really clear? Or perhaps there are things that we could work on? Let's start to have a real think about that. So what kind of boundaries we might be thinking about? Well, ownership and agency over your financial assets are your boundaries. Your boundaries are the ability to stay true to yourself, your spiritual beliefs and your passions, which is what you were talking about earlier. It's about your ability to prioritize personal time for self-care. Now, again, I don't want to stereotype here, and there'll be women in this group that are really doing well at this. But when I have worked with women over the years, it doesn't matter what level you're at, the guilt that women feel for prioritizing self-care is much higher than I see in other genders. The boundaries are the right to change your mind. It is okay to quit. It is okay to say something isn't working for you anymore and feel safe about that. And it's about that alone time with no distractions or interruptions. Now, some of us on this call may have a partner. Some of us might have children or pets or both. Some of us have families we need to care for. We may be carers. But it's really important to think that the only way we can help others and to help ourselves is to put our oxygen mask on first. So now I want you to reflect on these types of boundaries. Which ones are you doing really well at? And which ones do you think you could get even better at? Now, for me, weirdly, even though I'm a coach in resilience, the biggest thing that drops up for me is self-care. Going to the gym, I hate the gym actually, doing a class, getting on my Peloton bike. Sometimes my boundaries are blurred. I become fixated on work, and that is my go-to. What happens for you? What things do you see that might go? Let's start to see in the group. What do you start to lose in terms of your boundaries? For mine is personal care at that time, just looking after me. What things do you tend to lose sight of when your boundaries are blurred? Let's see if we've got patterns in the group. Yeah. Time to exercise. Isn't it funny? When our boundaries are blurred, there's one thing we should do, we don't do. It's really interesting. Quite often, it's the thing that you really need the most that you don't do when your boundaries are blurred. So some of you are saying that you lose the self-care and the time to exercise. Is there anything else you think you might lose sight of? Yeah, getting a massage. What should be prioritized work-wise? Now, this is an interesting one. Some of us, when our boundaries are blurred, will refer to type. So if we have a fear of failure, we'll start to work harder. If we've got a big mountain of work, we'll find prioritizing much more difficult. So what I'm asking you to do now is build that amazing self-awareness, because awareness precedes change. If we are not aware, we can't change. But let's start to think about these boundaries. What impact would improving boundaries have on you? What would you start to notice? For me, it would be laser beam focused, being really clear with my strategy, and it would also be doing some exercise. I tried on lots of clothes this morning and I thought, these are feeling a bit tight. It's because my boundaries over the last few weeks have been quite blurred with workload. For me, if I improve my boundaries, I would sleep better, my clothes would fit, and I'd also have that laser beam focus that I need for work. What impact would improving your boundaries have on you? Start to think. Now, some of you are talking about sleeping better. Sleeping is your superpower. So absolutely, if there was going to be one reason for you to improve your boundaries, it would be to get some more sleep or better sleep. Anything else? Switching off. Let's see what else might happen if we were to improve our boundaries. Finishing work at a sensible time, feeling okay to stop. All of you are saying sleep. We need to start to think about these boundaries and which are the ones that we need to focus on. Is it that we're working late? We're watching screens late? We have our phones in our beds? Thank you so much for saying regulating emotions and not having that fake smile. Remembering that when our boundaries are blurred and we are tired, our cortisol goes up. It triggers our adrenaline. It puts us into fight or flight, which makes it very hard to regulate our emotions. It's a completely natural response. Okay, so we're all starting to think about this now. We're all starting to build up that why for really thinking about what it is what good boundaries look like for us and what it is we need to do. So, why are we in our own way as women, ladies? And when we psychometric test resilience and well-being, as I said before, women demonstrate poorer boundaries than our male colleagues. That got even worse in the pandemic. Some of us were caring for our family members. For some of us, we were working from home whilst having children at home. Suddenly for women, the roles that we'd worked really hard to build in terms of that separation between home and life were blurred. We were the housewife, we were the cook, we were the cleaner, plus we were looking after children or caring for either parents or animals all the time at home. With that, Slack came in, Zoom came in, Teams were in, emails and WhatsApps. Suddenly, we had all of these forms of communication whilst looking after the home for some of us. And what we see is that we suffer lower self-belief than our male counterparts. So we're going to start to challenge that today. Do we have poorer boundaries because our self-belief is lower? Let's have a think. But actually, 2023 data shows that women demonstrate lower energy levels than men and high levels of burnout. So we need to think, what are we doing to stand in our own way? So we're going to start to think about ourselves. Now, some of you may have seen this before, and for me, this was an absolute game changer in putting the puzzle together as to why my boundaries are quite often challenged. So I'm going to ask you now to think about which working style you typically are. Now, some of you, when I'm talking this through, might say, actually, I'm a combination of one or two, but I want you to think about when you're under pressure, which one do you refer to? Now, Julie Hayes' study of working styles is amazing, and I'd love you all to go and look at it after this session. But let's start to think about you. Are you, when you're working, a be perfect? Are you someone that is excellent at getting the job done, but you will pore over the detail or work exceptionally hard, maybe into the night, to get a project done? Are you someone that when you've done your work, you'll reflect and think, I don't think that was good enough? And you might have a fear of failure or a need to achieve. You're someone that gets jobs given to them or projects given to them because they know that you're going to do an amazing job. But the risk for you is that you might burn out. You might excessively work on things, even though if you've just done your best, that would have been enough. I was a be perfect, and quite often when I'm tired and my boundaries are blurred, I will get into fear of failure. I might leave a workshop and think it was rubbish, or question little words that I'd said, or wish it could be better. So I want you to think about the be perfects in this room. How does that impact your boundaries? Now, the police people is quite obvious. We're someone that loves to say yes. We like people to feel good about the work we've done. We'll often put our hands up for jobs or projects, even if they're not aligned to our strategy. We're there for a lot of people, even when we're feeling tired, and we might compromise ourselves. For you, you get given a lot of tasks. Your boss or your line manager might think, do you know what, I know they'll say yes and it'll be a good job. But the risk for you is that you're compromising your values. Now, your be strong is great to have in a team. You're resilient. You get the job done. You'll work through things without really sharing your concerns because you'll just do it. You're typically very resilient, but you may not share how you really feel. You might be someone that may not like something, but will get on with it, but that may compromise your values. If you're leading a be strong, they might be a quiet quitter. They might leave without really telling you why. And the try hard is the one that loves different projects. You'll put your hand up, you'll do lots of things, but you might not always finish them because you love the excitement. How that can make you feel is actually a bit like you're the master of nothing. You might feel like you wish you completed stuff. Now, when we think about this group here, us 26, which working style do you relate mostly to? Let's see who we've got in the room. So you can either use the QR code or use the website and the hashtag number to vote. So let's see what we've got in this lovely room today. Now, I told you I'm typically a be perfect. Sometimes I can be a be strong, but when I'm under pressure, I'm a be perfect. And that was the reason why I burnt out and became a coach, because I was always working exceptionally hard, maybe too hard. And even if I'd done half of the hours I was doing, it still would have been good enough. Okay, so at the moment, we're voting more of a be perfect, which really doesn't surprise me. Let's think about what we are. So keep voting, guys, because it would be great for you to start to reflect. But let's start to think about you guys as a team. Now, you might be starting to think, it makes sense now. It makes sense as to why sometimes my boundaries are blurred. You might start to think about how it impacts your life, your relationships at work, but also how you feel about work. I want you to start to think about this in a positive way for you as well. Because your be perfects, actually, you're smashing it. Things you hand in are probably excellent. For the police people, you're probably great at doing lots of different things. If you are be strong, you are resilient. And if you're a try hard, you're actually really good at doing different tasks. But if we think about the majority of people in this room, we are be perfects. If you are working with a be perfect, think about their boundaries. If you are leading a be perfect, maybe don't give them all the work, because it's very likely they're not managing their boundaries. If you are managing or you work with the police people, challenge it. Why are you saying yes to that? Do you need to? Tell me how that might be aligned to your strategy. If you think you know a be strong in your team, go for a walk, find out how they're feeling. Perhaps really work on whether they are blurring their boundaries. And the same for the try hard. Get them to realize that they can and they've got the strength to complete a task. So just start to think about these roles that you play. What do they do that's really great, but how are they impacting your boundaries? Because we're going to start to challenge it today. I want you to start to challenge this boundary BS. Does your working style impact your boundaries, yes or no? What is stopping you from saying no? Now, remembering I said to you, I was brought up in a Catholic house. It was very strict, Catholic school. I had to sit nice at the table. I should be grateful that I've got a job. Just say yes and get on with it. And everything you do has to be perfect in order to get by in life. They were the messages that I had. So by saying no, I felt guilt. If a friend needs help, you must always say yes. If you don't agree with what your parents say, you don't disagree. I was brought up in a very authoritarian life. That is what's stopping me from saying no. What is it that's stopping you saying no? What feelings are ignited by saying no? And by saying yes to something, what is it you're saying no to? What are you compromising? So I'm just going to throw this out to the room now. Let's start to think about what feelings are ignited for you, both positively and negatively, when you say no. I said I used to, don't anymore. I used to feel guilt. I used to feel terrible guilt for saying no. Now, I feel really good for saying no and actually feel really proud of myself. Let's think about this room. What are the differences? What feelings are ignited for us when we say no? Let's see what everyone comes up with on the chat. What does it feel like to say no? Oh, some of us have this fear of missing out. Oh, yeah. And isn't that worse with social media? Sometimes everything looks amazing, doesn't it? Fear of upsetting others. I love it, Lisa. You say relief. It sounds like you've really worked on that, or you've always had it. Not wanting to let people down. Absolutely. Now, the biggest lesson I had is when I started saying no, nothing changed anyway. But it's how you explain saying no and aligning to your values, which we're going to look at next, which will help you. Some of you feel panic and pressure. I want you to start to come back. Where does that come from? I'm not expecting you to answer it here. Does that come from a belief system that you hold on to that you must never say no and you must always be there? It's really interesting, isn't it, what happens for us? Some of us actually go into fight or flight. So let's start to think about the tools now we can use to remove some of that pressure that you feel. Right. Now, guys, this, if you haven't done it already, must be your guide. I want to invite you to look through this list of prompts. Because what I'd love you to do is get to the point where you are really nailed on your core values. These are the things, if you haven't done it before, these are the values that are absolutely essential for you to stay true to yourself and set good boundaries. Not all of the values are on this list, but there are prompts. These are the things that when you are compromising them or not doing them, it puts you into feeling lower resilience and in a state of stress. So, for example, I have a massive value around fun. Okay, really important to me. And when I'm working really hard and my boundaries are not there, I don't have fun. I don't connect with people. Family is another thing. When my boundaries are blurred, I'm not aligning to my core value of family time. I'm not actually present. But I know that I can say no with compromising those things. So if I'm asked to be at somewhere and my daughter's in a show or she's doing something with her dance and I say no, I remind myself because my value is family and that will be compromising it. So I want you to now look through this list and think about what are your top 3 core values? What's important to you? Let's see if anyone can come already and know what they are. Let's see with the chat, what are your values? Let's see within the room what people think of their core values. I'll just pop that list up again. Now, some of you said that you feel a fear of letting people down when you say no. But if someone was asking you to do something that meant that it took you away from your core values, it's really important to remind yourself that it doesn't align and you're compromising them. So I'd love just a few of you. So we've got Eleanor, family, friendship, and community. Leanne, truth, love that. Family, connecting with others, respect. Okay. So for some of you that have these core values, why are we saying yes to things when we're compromising them? What if we were to work and really think about our core values and only saying yes when we're aligned and saying no when it compromises them? Sarah, you've got trust, big one of mine as well, personal growth and family. So the next time you are asked to do something that compromises that, it's much easier to say no. Okay, so many of you have got family here. Okay. Right. It's absolutely essential that we think about the power of values, purpose, and strategy in helping us set boundaries. I want you to use your values as your compass in setting boundaries. And when you feel like you can't say no, come back to it. I'm going to say no to this because it's taking me away from the thing that's really important to me. Now, let me guess, some of us can't say no at times, okay? It's not always possible. But where there is possibility to set that boundary, come back to your values. I want you to really pay attention to your why, particularly at work, particularly in life. Know what your goals are and align every activity to it. Now, let's imagine Natalie, she says to me, do you know what, Emma? I'd like you to come over to a country in Europe and we're going to have a week away and we're going to work over for a week. And it meant that I was missing my daughter's activities or things that are important to them. I might feel guilty for saying no, but what I'm coming back to is to say, Natalie, that it sounds like a wonderful idea. However, it's compromising some really important events in my daughter's life. Can we do that virtually? Now, what I'm doing is I'm reminding myself of my values. I'm aligning to what's really important to me as my purpose in life is my family. And it's making it much easier to say no. I want you to ensure that your strategy and your goals at work and in life are clear. If you are not sure about your strategy and it's unclear, and we talked about that clarity being key, it's far harder to say no. So come back, think about your life and your professional strategy. Think about your goals as a team. If you are leading or working in a team, are you clear with where you're heading? Because it's much harder to say no and have poor boundaries when you're not. So take home one is know your values. Take home two is what is your why? Okay. So here's some ideas, and we're going to come off share in a minute and use the chat. So when is it okay to say no? Now, some of you said, I go into a state of panic. It is okay to say no where you can, where you're doing something that doesn't feel right according to your personal value and ethics. It's okay to say no when you're taking on more than your team can deliver. Now, this is a one. It's okay when it's not your place to say yes. How often do we say yes because our ego might be playing out? When we think we can do something, but we might not be the best people. A really great one, if some of you with work have been asked to do projects that you feel you could do, but perhaps you're not actually the right person to make that a really great job. It's all right to say no when your direction is not in line with your strategy, vision, or desired outcomes. And how many times are we asked to do something when it's their emergency and not yours? So let's think about some other reasons why it might be all right to say no. What other reasons might you say no when it would feel okay to say no? Anything else that's coming up in the room? When is it okay to say no? Any other ideas? The big one is, why am I saying yes? Yeah, Natalie, when it's like when you're overloaded, it's okay to say no. If it feels unsafe, oh, I love this, or the safety of my team are at risk, absolutely. Again, that comes back to the clarity, the boundaries of the team. Are you sure if you're leading a team that everyone knows what the boundaries are as well? We've all workplaces where someone says, oh, yeah, I can do that. And you think, no, why are they saying yes? Is it a confidence thing? Okay. So what we start to think about is when we can say no, but challenging ourselves is when we say yes. Now, I tend to say yes, actually, when I am overloaded, because I step into that autopilot. So start to think about why you're saying yes. Okay. So we talked about your working style, and some of you were perfectionists, some of you were please people, a couple of you were be strong and try hard. But I want you to think about now your ego state when you're saying no. Now, this, along with working styles, has completely changed how I deliver, how I coach, and how I help people say no. And I want you to think about this as a bit of a game. And when we are communicating, we tend to have a dance between how we communicate with one another. Some of us quite often step into the controlling parent in a team. If we're leading, we might be more of a controlling parent, and sometimes we need to be. We're much more directive. We're much more people to tell people how it is and push, not pull, when we're managing or working with people. We might be very authoritarian in the style. Now, some of us in certain roles need to do this. Now, some of you might be more nurturing. If you are leading people, you might be more of a mother figure. You're very likely to know all about everyone's lives. You're really good at soothing people, and people tend to come to you for advice, both professionally and personally. Again, at times, we need to be nurturing parent because we need to help people, right? But we might be having poorer boundaries because of that. I was a nurturing parent leader, and it really damaged my well-being and my boundaries. I didn't have a line that was clear between me and my team, and professional and personal. Now, some of us, when we're communicating and working with people, might be more of an adapted child. We do what we say, so we do what people ask us to do. We don't really disagree. Some of you that are be strong might recognize this. And we tend to just do as we're told. Again, the adapted child is unlikely to speak up. Now, if you're an adapted child team member, it might be that you have a controlling parent leader. And some of us are free child, we're rebels. We do what we like, we have fun, we get the job done. How many of you, all the time, as much as you can be, are in adult ego state? Are you someone that, despite the circumstances, comes in as an adult and goes up to be equal with the person that you're working with? If you are adult, most of the time you will have decent boundaries. But if you are an adapted child team member, you might have poorer boundaries. If you are a nurturing parent team member or leader, it might be that your boundaries are blurred between work and life. Let's start to think about you then. How more on the whole are you? How often do you notice that you are in child mode when you are under pressure? How many of you can really relate to perhaps being a nurturing parent or even a nurturing friend and what that means for your boundaries? What are we coming up with here? Have we got any adapted child or nurturing parents? Or any of you managers and you notice the difference? Let's see what's coming up in chat. Yeah. Leanne, so many of us are nurturing parents. Now that is wonderful because aren't we lovely? Some of us are wired to be very nurturing. It feels good to help and we have empathy, which might be our top strength, but it may be our weakness if we overplay it. Now, if you are a naturally nurturing parent, I want you to start to become aware of that. Is it appropriate for me to nurture right now? Or am I disabling the person that I'm nurturing? How can I step into adult ego state so I'm coming at it and helping that person work with an adult as an adult ego state? Sarah, you make a very good point. Since becoming a parent, you are full into nurturing parent mode and you might bring that into work. My question is it helping the person all the time that you're nurturing? I love that. Leanne, a mentor told me not always wear my pastoral hat. Now, what's interesting is quite often the people we work with and we lead, if we're managing, it isn't right for them to have a nurturing parent all the time. What they need is a challenger appropriately. What we want is the people in our team and the people in our life come as equals to us. And by being a controlling parent or a nurturing parent, it's very likely they are a child. It's not helping all of us grow. So my wish is for you now to really think about how you're communicating, working with people, and whether this is helping you or disabling your boundaries. So this is how I want you to get into the adult ego state as much as you can. When you are at work and you're under pressure and you feel like your boundaries are being blurred, identify which ego state you're in. Are you an adapted child? Are you a nurturing parent? Are you a controlling parent, leader, if you're leading people? And that is meaning that the people in your team are child, which means when you step out of work, they're not able to do their job as an adult. If you are in one of the roles that's holding you back, give her a hug, thank her and tell her that you don't need to be there. And then I want you to visualize moving yourself into the adult ego state, present with your strengths, knowing that you are going to empower the people around you. Be the authentic you. And I want you to correct your body language. Now, when I coach and run women's programs, so often people are actually in either the nurturing parent or the adapted child. If you are someone that takes on too much, is it because you're one of these roles that's holding you back? How you get into adult ego state is to come back to your values, remind yourself of your strengths, and think about, by saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? So there's less of it in the room today, so we're going to probably move through this quite quickly. But I want you to think about how you can be a boundary boss. These are the ways in which we can help our boundaries. So I'm going to talk these through. I'm going to think about which ones you feel comfortable with. So when someone asks you to do something, you might say, I can't do that, but I'll tell you what I can do. I can do this. So what you're offering them is a way to say no, but you give them something that aligns to your strategy. Or, I can't do this, but is there another way that I can support you? Really great way to help you stay authentic to you, but you're saying no. That's a great idea, but right now it's not aligned with our current strategy and goals. So I'm going to decline that. Coming into adult ego state. That is a difficult commitment. Can we think about how you can move forward without me? I do that with my children. It works really well. Sometimes with my daughter, I hear what you're saying, Sienna. However, I think you've got the strength to do that. How could you? What? I'm saying no, but I'm making them realize they can do it. I appreciate you'd like me to do that. And given my other commitments, I can offer you this within that time scale. This is not saying no, but it's having a no with boundaries and aligning to what is important to you. So as we come off here, I would love you to think about which ones you feel you'd feel most comfortable with. Any there that really resonate with you? Yeah, Lucy said, I can't do that, but I can do this. That's what I naturally would do. Amazing. Now, if you want to go one step further, you might say, sorry, I can't do it. Even better. I like anything which allows for a compromise. It makes people feel as though you're giving them something, but you're still saying no. Yeah, I like the empowering possibilities of go without me. Now, one thing if you are managing people here or you're in a team is, I hear you, but let's think about the strengths that you've got to be able to do that without me. There's one thing we haven't talked about here because this is about you and not leading others. But actually, so many people do not know their strengths. And the reason why they ask you to do it is because they don't realize they can. If you are someone on this call that is a leader, it would be phenomenal to do a strengths audit, and it will help you set your boundaries because suddenly the person that you're working with knows that they can do it without you. Feeling less guilty if you compromise, but Sarah, I want you to pay attention to not compromising too much. Keep coming back to your strategy and your goals. It's okay to say no if it's not aligned. Remembering that everyone asking you is something that might be important to them, but it may not be important to you. Yeah, Leanne, thank you. Great idea, but it doesn't line with our strategy this year. That's why clarity is so important here, personally and professionally. Really be clear with your strategy, be clear with your vision and why, and know what your team values are. If something isn't aligning, then it's okay to say no. So because we have a smaller group, we are going to finish a bit earlier today. But what we're going to start to think about now is how we can make this happen. Because we have covered a hell of a lot. We've looked at the data that shows that women's resilience is lower, largely due to boundaries and self-belief. Is it linked? Is it that sometimes we aren't confident in who we are and our strengths and our ability and clarity to say no? Because if it is that, I want you to go and do a strengths audit. I want you to ask people around you what's brilliant about you and get some feedback. It's much easier to say no when you know these things. We looked at your working style. We looked at what it is that may be getting in your way. Because if you are a be perfect, is it that you take on so much because you think you can get that done perfectly? Do you overwork, even if the work you've done at 50% of the rate you're doing would be good enough anyway? Are you a please people? Because that will be getting away with your boundaries. We looked at your values. If you could do anything today, keep coming back to them. If your value is family, then why are you working until 10 o'clock at night? Come back to your strategy and your goals. It's much easier to say no when you know where you're heading. And most importantly, you can say no, but find a way to say no that works for you. So what I'd love you to do is on the chat, just think about what was a bit of a light bulb moment for you today. What came up for you that you thought, do you know what, I did not think that would come up in this session, and it's made me think. I want you to make just one commitment to yourself around your boundaries and your ability to say no, because you are the person that you have to look after first. That oxygen mask must come on for you first before you can help anyone else. And so many of us in this room are more nurturing. And what is the one thing you're going to do to protect your boundaries? For me, I need to come back to laser beam focus, blocking time out in my diary and realizing that when I'm tired, I'm no good anyway. So 3 things. What have been your light bulb moments? I want you to personally make one commitment to yourself. And what will be the first thing you will do to protect your boundaries? And let's see what everyone is saying on the chat. So I really have loved seeing what you're all saying today. So what are you going to do to make it happen? What has been your light bulb moment? Don't worry about showing what you're going to commit because that's just for you. But what would be the first thing you would do to protect your boundaries? Oh, thank you, Leanne. You need to nurture less and challenge more. Can I say something? challenge is so important. We need to be challenged. Imagine we were all just nurtured, we wouldn't grow. But it's been challenging in that adult to adult way. I love that, Lisa. And I think it's so important for us to pay attention that we are all in it together. Be curious about what is stopping team members from saying no. Is it confidence, self-belief? Do they know what their strengths are? Do they know have they got clarity in where they're heading? Framing the no with your core values and not being afraid to express that. I love that. Thank you for asking. However, if I was to say yes to that, it would really compromise what's absolutely my motivator. But I appreciate you asking. It's about finding your way. Create boundaries and let other people know. This is infectious, Sharon, right? When you do it, someone says, you know what? I can do it. And then suddenly you're going to find you're building your resilience with everyone around you. Everyone is going to be feeling better. So being really clear and unapologetic about that is great. And feeling guilty less. Us women, quite often, not all of us will feel guilty. Ask yourself, why am I feeling guilty? What is the BS? I'm not going to swear, but I'd like to, that's showing up. If it's guilt, but you're compromising your values, you have to lose the guilt. Okay, so we're finishing off now. So I just want to say that this is one of my favorite topics because it is so important for all of us to build good boundaries, because not only does it help us, it helps others. It is infectious. And it will also help you build your resilience and succeed, because none of us can fill from an empty cup. So please do keep in touch with me. I would love to speak to you. QR code me, find me on LinkedIn, or I'm happy to take an email. I'm always happy to answer any questions on email or LinkedIn. I love hearing from great people. So do get in touch if there's something that's come up for you or you'd like to explore more. But as always, thank you so much to Natalie and the Women Empowering Defence team. And for some of you, I will see you next week where we'll be talking about conscious leadership and the impact it has on yourself and others. Thank you so much.
Thanks ever so much to everyone that's joined us this afternoon. And as Emma said, she will be at the Women Empowering Defence Conference. So if any of you will be joining us in London next Tuesday, we look forward to seeing you. But for now, Emma, thank you so much. Can't wait to catch up with you next week.
Yeah,
and I hope you all have a lovely rest of the week. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.